name is Jessica, and I am with the Museum of Ontario Archaeology. And you're probably wondering why I'm holding up this shoebox here. Well, let's open it up and find out. Well, inside we kind of have a funky looking contraption, but we do have a little cup full of soil, and inside of that is our little bean seed. So I'm going to set that down here. Now the reason we're going to be focusing on beans for this craft is that they were one of the plants that were farmed outside of the village adjacent to the museum, which we call today the Lawson site. So we're going to talk a little bit about beans, we're going to learn why they like the sun so much, and then we're going to make this shoebox contraption up that will let the bean grow from its little cup up and around these two barriers, and then through the hole where the sun's going to be shining. Now, we do have to be really patient with this because the bean's not going to magically sprout as soon as we stick it in that cup full of dirt. So this is what it should look like after a couple weeks. That'll be pretty cool. So hopefully that'll work. And we're going to let that bean do all of that work for us along with the sun. Alright, so to begin our craft, we're going to go through all the materials and make sure we have them all. So the first one we need a shoebox, and this is easiest with a shoebox that has one of the just removable lids, not one that's connected. That's so you can access your plant a little bit easier. We need a just simple piece of cardboard. I pulled this off of one of the flaps on a box, on a delivery box. We're going to need some duct tape. This is if you need it. I'm going to use a glue gun as well, just for extra reinforcement. As I said, the glue gun. We're going to need a marker to mark exactly where we need to cut our hole, scissors to do the cutting. I'm going to also have a little X-Acto knife. If you don't have that, that's totally fine as well. And then our main stars here is our little cup of soil and our bean seed. It's very tiny, but that's our green bean seed. So we're going to put those off to the side for right now, since we don't need them right away. So to begin, we are going to open our box up here. I'm going to set that off to the side. And we're going to need to make our little barriers for our bean, because we need to give it something to go around on its journey to the sun. Now you might be thinking, well, how the heck does the bean exactly know where the sun is? So plants actually have this really neat way of figuring out which part of them is getting the most sunlight. And since they know, there we go, that's good. Since they know that that part of the plant is going to be getting all the light anyway, they want to get as much as they possibly can. So they have inside of them these special cells that tell the plant to, hey, start growing faster on this side that isn't getting any sun. And then, in a way then, the plant sends that signal that it needs to start growing in that direction, and it starts bending. And so that's why the plants always bend, and that's especially the whole purpose of this. The bean is going to bend towards the sun. So as it's growing here, you'll see it'll want to curve up and around toward the top where the sun is coming in, or a light source. So I just put some glue on the edge of that piece of cardboard just to hold it in place, and I'm actually going to take a little duct tape once that's dry. So you put one here, and then you put one a little bit closer to the top. I'm going to make this cut a little bit smaller. Just like that. There we go. We don't want to make it too hard for it. We want to give our bean a chance to grow. Now, something else really interesting with beans is way back when the Lawson site was occupied at the Museum of Ontario Archaeology, right next to it. When it was occupied, the indigenous people there, they didn't just grow plants like we do today, where we have one whole field of corn and one whole field of beans and one other whole field of pumpkins. They actually used a special system, which was the maize, beans, and squash. Now, maize is, of course, what we call corn today. It's developed a little bit more. It's evolved so that it's better tasting, it's more nutritious, different things like that. So back then they called it maize. And what they did is they all worked together, those plants worked together to grow in a way that would produce the most food for the people living there, and would also, you can see my shoe size, and would also support each other. So the plants actually work together in order to be healthy and to grow. And so what that means is you have your corn, and everybody knows what corn kind of looks like. It's really tall, and it grows really tall. Now beans, as you might know, they grow on vines. I'm going to quick interrupt myself. So I drew this square on the top of the box, and so I'm just going to cut it out in case you don't see me doing it. So as I was saying, those beans, they grow on vines. You know, I might just get this started and then use scissors. So when you plant beans, you usually like to have like a pole for them to climb up, so they're not just laying on the ground. They're not just like bushing out, because then you're not going to get as many veggies off of them. You're not going to get as many beans, and you want to get as much food as you possibly can. So what the indigenous people figured out is that if they planted the beans with the beans would grow up the corn stalks, and then that way they would have the support. And then the beans would also give the corn support too, so it could grow even taller than if it was just planted on its own. Now the squash worked with that whole system with the beans and the corn by shading the ground, because as you know, pumpkins, they grow low to the ground. They don't grow very tall. Oh my goodness, my box has 2 layers in it. Double the work. Oh no. And with those big broad leaves from the pumpkins, it tends to keep the moisture in the ground. And so because the plants, of course, need sunshine and water to grow, the more water, really, the better. This is not going to be perfect. As long as you have a window that the sun can get in, that you get a good amount of sun. There we go. Kind of strange. I was not expecting that. There we go. All right. That gets a good amount of light there. Alright, so there's our little box. So those big broad leaves, that keeps the water in, and so all of those plants are getting a lot of water, and then they're all benefiting from the sun. The squash doesn't really need as much sun, so that's nice that the corn and the beans shade that all out. And that's how all of those plants work together. Now, for our little seed here, we're going to take our cup of soil. Right here I have some potting soil, and this is my little bean seed, as I said. And I'm just going to use my pinky finger and just make a little hole. It doesn't have to be very deep. Just something that the bean can lay in. And then we just cover it up. There we go. Perfect. Now, our bean, as I said, going to need some water. You don't have to give it too much. There we go. Just give it plenty of water there. And then we just have to wait for it to grow. And this is probably the longest part. But beans tend to grow pretty quickly, luckily. So all we might want to have to do is put this in a window, wait until we get a little bit of a sprout. And then what we're going to do is we're going to pop it inside of our box. Just like that. If you can see it, it's kind of hard to see under that little shield there. And then as it starts to grow, the sun is going to shine through this little hole. And the bean is going to say, hey, I'm pretty far away from the sun. I'm going to grow over onto this side. And so the bean's going to start bending this way around this shield, and then it will realize, I'm not growing a whole lot on this side, and the sun's coming down from over here. So then the bean's going to weave around this way. And then finally, it'll realize, the perfect amount of sun is right through this little hole, so it crawls up through the hole there. And that's the whole idea of how that works. And then as it gets bigger, you can help it along. You can tilt the cup a little bit so that it can be prompted to grow up those little shields there and to begin with. And then that's pretty much it. You can pop your little seed right on in there. And then to keep it really dark so it's not trying to come out this way, which would pretty much do the same exact thing, you're just going to cover up the box like that. And then just leave it standing in your window, somewhere nice and sunny where it's going to get a whole lot of sun. It's a little hard to see that. But that is pretty much how we're going to learn about